Did you miss me? Well, I missed streaming live Crazyhouse, so I just found out that Crazyhouse Shield Arena is going on. They played for an hour. You can see at the top. Crazy 8, followed by Maple Kev and Black Zeus. I don't know who this Black Zeus is. Um, let's see what's happening, and we can maybe can find some action. Oh, Crazy 8 is playing Black Zeus. Seems like a very interesting position with the weak kings. Let's see what happened in the opening. I'm really curious here why he didn't play d4. Is this some kind of theoretical line? I'm not sure. So rather than taking on c6 and opening a lot of diagonals for the black bishops, white sacrifices a piece. He already had one pawn and he got an extra one. And he's going in for the kill here. Black counters with a piece sacrifice on f2. Trying to undermine the pawn on e4. They're trading pieces. Seems like white got there first. I wonder how safe that h6 square is. f4 shelters the white king. Also provides a square for the pawn on g5 maybe. Black pins the pawn. Which came in handy now, because it can simply take on g5. And that pawn threatens, well, not mate, but almost on g5. So black needs to find a way out of that prison with the king. White tries to nail the king to the edge of the board, and we're live. White would probably like to close the f5 here somehow. Yeah, put a pawn on f5. Hi there, Chelsea Club TV. So the threat is to take on g5 and trade a shitload of pieces and mate the black king. And if knight d2, white can simply run in this direction. And now h4 is hanging actually. So it seems the black pieces are depleted, and now the queen will take on h7 and deliver mate. So Crazy 8 is at the top of the tournament. Let's follow him. Okay. I hope you liked what you saw there. I adopted you. Well, maybe I did. Okay. So let's see if someone is playing. Here's an interesting game. Maple Kev against Anjo Nakamura. And it seems like black is in the driver's seat. He has more pieces on the board. White's king seems in a little bit of trouble, but black only has bishops and rooks in hand, so the white king does indeed seem a little bit safe at the moment. I can't see any direct threats. Yeah, thank you so much. Good luck with your work. So white took the time to threaten the black queen. E4 is a great square for the bishop, controlling a lot of squares, and maybe threaten to take on h7 or trade on c6 eventually. So the question is, who are these two players? Well, experienced players. I'm sure they have played, almost 35,000 games. And this guy hasn't played more than 5,700 games. So they are well known. And white is pushing black around a little bit here. No, it's the monthly Shield Arena. No, I'm not sure when it will start, but the Shield Arena has a lot of strong players participating. Welcome everybody who's watching, all 4 of you. Maybe more people will join, or maybe someone will look afterward. I'll just try to find some interesting games that you can learn from. Oh, I just watched his previous game. I'm sure we'll get back to him. I'm very sure. So white was eager to keep on chasing the black queen, but putting the pawn on g5 seemed like a slight mistake, because black quickly checked on h4 and picked up the pawn here because the knight is pinned. And now black has the knight he needs to start his own counterattack. And this looks quite dangerous for white. I don't think black has anything to worry about. Even a queen sacrifice on e8 doesn't seem like it will quite do it. I think maybe h8 is a safe square eventually. You can just sacrifice your queen. And black is threatening to put a queen here on f2 or e2 or somewhere. So winning the queen with bishop at g7 doesn't help white. He'll get mated. So simply taking on e2 is mate now. Okay, Anjum Nakamura takes this game. Let's get back and see what's happening here. Crazy8, is he playing? No, he has paused. He is in the fridge getting a beer, celebrating his first place so far. So is Maple Kev playing? Black Zeus. Oh, this is going to be a time scramble. Black Zeus down to his last 10 seconds. And I think he has berserk because he's not getting any extra time when he's making his moves. So black will just try to keep on checking and winning on time. So queen takes c6 now for sure, and queen b5 mate. 1 second to go. Plenty of time. So it was very unnecessary to take on c6 and let the pawns out. Had a lot of time to think there. He should have just ran away here. Maybe he won't get far, but at least this bishop is covering, and this is covering some important squares. So Maple Cav against Banana Joe. Let's have a quick look at the opening symmetrical game where black chooses the very popular kingside fianchetto. So the f6 move has weakened the light squares. I would like to see c4 at some point. Just trying to weaken the light squares a little bit. Question is, what do you take with on c4 now? Could even take with a rook, actually. So if white places a pawn on g2, black will probably take and play pawn g4, but maybe this is what white should do. Because where is the follow-up for black? At some point maybe you can give the knight for 2 pawns and then white is up on material. On the other hand, the so-called threat to take on f1 isn't a strong one because the rook is worth about the same. And actually taking back with either the queen or the bishop would give white a very defensible kingside position. Oh, you're welcome back then. I'll comment on your games. So d5 seems very natural here, trying to put pressure on the light squares. And rather than giving up the light square bishop, black tries to fantasize about a mate here on h1. So he would love to see the d file opened. Oh, you're welcome. And d5 is threatened, so what do you do? Taking on d6 seems natural, and then maybe pawn e7, because there's a pin here due to the mating threat on h1. So why not make use of it? This bishop is actually hard to get rid of because knight f4 you simply take on f4. Why not put the pawn on e7? So given the chance, I think black will take with the queen here on d6, offering a queen trade. And watch out for stuff like knight g4 and take on f2 and then take the queen. So this looks risky, but white can get back and capture the pawn on g2 because black doesn't have a pawn for or a bishop for g4 here. So threatening to take on f2 here. Also maybe black will maybe take on e3, trade queens and then go for the white king. Banana Joe is really low on time. Taking on e3, absolutely opening up f2. So if the queens come off, black is in great shape here. Maybe now pawn h3, yeah, because you have a fork here on f2 coming. Threatening mate on g2, so white cannot take on d1, which is very annoying. So Banana Joe just surrenders. And let's go back. Crazy8 said in the chat that he would be back soon. So who will we be watching until he gets back? So let's look at this game. So black is really low on time, the clear rating favorite. And this is a nice, very instructive move. Trading just the right pieces, bringing the king out in the open, and now it spells mate on g5. That's a little upset. National Master Noki is probably underrated. Up 61 in just one game there. And Crazy8 is back and playing Black Zeus. Let's have a look at this game. Started with a not so theoretical line, b3. And this is a very natural follow-up, putting pressure here on e5. I like this setup against the fianchetto queenside bishop because it's very hard to get around this pawn. And meanwhile, the black bishops are pointing towards the king side. So maybe just pin the knight on f3. And unless white can play d4 somehow, he will need to maybe play around this bishop, and that takes forever. So just focus your game on the king side now as black. You can just play bishop to g4, let him trade a bishop. I like the black position here. I don't quite see the future for the bishop on b2. But admittedly, white is very solid here. So black will have to try really hard to break through. And the only real setback with the pawn formation here is that it's virtually impossible to advance the pawns in the center, because advancing this would leave the e5 pawn hanging, and advancing e4 would open this diagonal for the bishop. This is probably a dubious move because black was immediately threatening to take on f2, placing another knight there, and e3 would be hanging. So not a tempo well spent there by white. Yeah, you need patience here. Maybe white is looking to sacrifice or trade a piece here for 2 pawns on e5 at some point. So black just reinforces the protection. And also after f6, maybe at some point you can start advancing with the d pawn, but you have to be careful here so you don't simply drop a knight. Crazy8 is a great attacker, And he spots a chance to weaken the white king side. I'm not sure though how great the compensation is. At least he has some compensation. Although white is happy to give a piece for 2 pawns there. I think maybe the piece sacrificed on h2 was a bit optimistic. Not a big deal to give away the rook here. But the problem is that white has an extra pawn now, so he will start putting those pawns on the board, and all of a sudden he can take on e5 maybe. And okay, so nice little trick here. Take, queen takes, and you have rook h5, but maybe white can take on h5. So this looks like a bad idea for... I would have gone the other way and taken with the queen here on h5, because there are all sorts of threats then for white with the heavy in hand and everything. Weakening the g3 square, so don't capture here because you will get mated by pawn g3 and queen h4 or h2. And actually pawn g3 is a great threat here, so you need to be super careful, but even pawn g3 by white, it doesn't solve the problems, because I think queen takes, rook takes, and then simply queen takes g3. And it's good night and goodbye for white. So white wants to take on f2 with check. I think white hides in the corner. White is up a lot on time, so he should really be careful here. And notice that white only has 3 knights in hand, and knights are not the greatest defender. So what about simply something on g3 here? Isn't this just over in a few moves? Maybe bishop here. Or even bishop at h4 maybe was better, to have some support here. Then you could have just taken on g3. So there are multiple threats here. White, black can take here. You can play some heavy on e2, and it's not possible to protect against all these threats. And simply rook on e1 will decide matters. Let's have a quick look at the critical positions here. Actually, white seems to be a little better here. I'm a bit surprised, actually. But rook e1 was weak. Yeah. Black needed to go back. And even knight takes f2. Look at that move. And then another knight on g4. Because how do you even protect e3? And that would have been nice. So f6. I was curious here. I would have played knight h6, but yeah, this pawn structure for black isn't so good. So he decided to sacrifice a piece on h2 instead. He simply took on h2. And this is not enough compensation, even though bishop to h3 looked a bit passive. As I mentioned, white is happy to give a piece there for 2 pawns. And apparently black missed a chance here with knight to g5, not at g5. So here is the position I was mentioning. Why didn't he take with the bishop? Knight takes, queen takes, and for instance, I assume this was the idea, but you'd simply take on h5. And this is so dangerous. For instance, knight at g6, or, well, you only have one diag, so maybe not pawn to g6, but simply knight at g6. And I don't see an attack here for black, but white has such great prospects here. At any given moment, a rook can land here, capturing a8. So there was definitely a chance missed. Oh, sorry. Instead he gave his queen. And rook takes f2 was a fantastic move. And bishop at g3 was the quickest. It's made in 3. But it doesn't really matter. You could take on g3 here. And then what? The move black chose wins as well, but let's see what's the quickest mate here. Just use the magnet and another magnet. There's no way back for the king. Okay, so king g3, queen here, and rook to f2, or you could be a bit more economical and take on g4. Okay, interesting game. Crazy8 has a clear lead. He's not playing at the moment. Okay. So, Black Zeus is playing against David. Let's watch the game. What happened in the beginning here? That was strange. Spending a tempo here, that cannot be a good idea. White has some very strong light square compensation here. And picking up a knight here for g5 seems like a good idea. Oops. He wants to take on d4 probably. So black gives a knight voluntarily. And he's trying to escape here. Somehow. And actually it looks like he's getting away a little bit here. So if black can take here, take twice, winning a piece, that would leave the king a little bit exposed. Oh, why not take on f5? King takes. It's up on the 4th rank, the king. So I'm thinking maybe knight g3 followed by queen g4. Looks like compensation. Instead he tries to push the d pawn and then take on f5. So, is there a mate somewhere here? This picks up a rook, which obviously threatens a lot of things. Check here, or maybe check here. And you can, I was about to say check here, and maybe some light piece here, and pawn h7. White is enjoying a great attack here. Who invented Crazyhouse or Bughouse? No one knows. I'm sure it's been around since at least the 60s. But no one knows who invented the games. I'm thinking maybe pawn takes here, rook takes d7, and bishop e6. That was an interesting idea, because it threatens not only rook at g8, but also rook at e8. Let's have a look at that position afterwards. This just seems too bleak. He doesn't have any knights, and he's not getting any knights because black is keeping all the knights in hand. So just be careful here. Maybe it's a threat to play bishop g8. So we put a knight on the board. Seems very natural to try to pick up that knight. Yeah, bishop g5. But this is a strong counterattack now. Threatening to take on g5 and also threatening to deliver a smothered mate by queen g1 and knight takes f2. So it's sort of a double threat. And speaking of double threat, there's a check, and you want to pick up the knight here on e2. But now there's really no good knight check for white, is there? This simply trades. And now the light pieces control a lot of squares here around the black king. And if he can take on h3, that would be just wonderful. So I'm thinking maybe take on d8, and then if the rook takes back, take on h3. Isn't this the time when you take on h3? Yeah, threatening mate here. Rook g1, take on f2, and if white takes here, you can play bishop g2. So maybe keep on placing knights on e4. Oh, black just switched to some chess here. And poor white walked into the mate here. That was an interesting game. I'm sure white was better here. Definitely. Much, much better. So f4 is an interesting idea. Letting that rook on f1 loose on the f5. But this is still good. Good, good, good. Everything's fine. So knight g3 is recommended. Okay, but this is still good for white. And this, accepting the piece sacrifice, seems dangerous indeed. So the computer is recommending queen g4 check. And what if, let's say, pawn here? So simply bishop d5, king takes. And there's a mate on c4, so you cannot take there. And if you can't take there, black is doomed. Okay. Instead, he checked on h3, and now things are not so clear. But here, once again, white missed a chance here. Queen h5. What about this move? Surely there's something good here. Yeah, for instance, f4. Bringing the rook into the game. Okay. So, some missed chances there in that game. Let's go back and see. Crazy8 is in the lead with 95. Well, at the moment I'm commenting here, so I'm not playing. Not sure who you are anyway. Okay, we played before, I can see. So we can play for sure some other day. I love playing 1-0 casual. And let's see how Crazy8 handles Sir Max. Excuse me. And Crazy8, he loves this little piece sacrifice. And why does black sacrifice the piece here? What does it get if white takes? Well, first of all, white has spent a couple of tempos to win a knight. That is not worth as much in Crazyhouse as it is in chess. And black gets the open e-file, a lot of scope for his bishops. And at some point, maybe he can place the pawn on e4, and there's simply no good squares for the white pieces. So definitely great compensation for black. So white actually avoids taking on f6. So I guess a little hit and run here, provoking f3. Let's see if that's actually a weakness or... Also notice that white doesn't have a pawn here to start his attack on the black king. And some great opportunities for the black rooks. Looks like Crazy8 has berserked in this game. So here we are live. A lot of pressure here from the black pieces. Threatening the knight here on b3. But it seems like white is defending okay here. The knight on c5 is defended by the pawn and the bishop. And I don't think that white needs to fear a bishop sacrifice on h2. So now the black forces are depleted. Maybe it's time to put the rook somewhere in action. Well, the threat on the white knight there was a bit of a nuisance. So why not take care of it? No threat against the pawn on h2 anymore. I'm thinking maybe knight at h3, yeah. Because this guy is a great defender. Black is just going for it here. You need a pawn for g2. Black picked up the pawn. But white is defending rather coolly here. And as a matter of fact, taking on g2 is not a big threat. Because pawn takes, queen takes, and you're still away one move shy of attacking. Now is the time to counterattack here. Maybe knight c7 quickly. So the rook here, you have a fork on e7, opening up the last rank. You can take on d6, threaten f7. Also at some point just taking g2 because black doesn't have any knights. So probably take the rook and on f6. The knight on g2 is not that dangerous. And Crazy 8 is about to lose. Not only on time, but he's getting checkmated here. Knight takes f6 and queen takes g8. Checkmate. Okay, so some excitement here in the top because Maple Kev is on fire. Maybe he will get the chance now to catch Crazy 8. And speak of the devil, they are facing off here. Maple Kev against Crazy 8, the top two players. And let's have a quick look at the opening. Same piece sacrifice line. And here Crazy 8 chooses to fianchetto his kingside bishop. Giving up the piece for two central pawns. But I'm not sure how strong the pawns are really. Let's say you put a knight here and then another knight on g5 maybe, hitting f7. It's not so easy to protect f7, is it? Or maybe you play knight at d6 then. Oh well. So rather than doubling the pawns, white forks his way back to g4. And now with the king in the corner, the diagonal just became one square shorter, so the bishop has to stand somewhere where it can be attacked, either on f6 or g7. So maybe simply bishop at h6. You would prefer to have a pawn there, but white doesn't have any pawns. So of course you could take here on f8, queen takes, and there's a pawn hanging on d5, but then black is probably ready to counterattack. But what about knight takes d4 here? Is this really wise? It's an odd choice, because taking with the knight and then Bishop g7, king g8. Then what? I'm not sure about that position. The thing is, the rook is trapped, so probably after bishop g7 you can just take on d4 and then pick up the rook, because it cannot hide on e8 because of bishop takes e8, and then there's a mate in the corner. So maybe it was a genius move to play queen d4 check. Or maybe it wasn't. Let's see. Which is it? So probably looking to capture on f5, but now there's... Well, what do you do here? Seems like a critical position. Maybe knight at e6, hitting the queen and covering g7. That's the type of move I would be looking for anyway. Indeed, he plays knight e6 here. And somehow I think the white attack is bouncing back now. Black can just put a pawn maybe on g7 or take on h6. Why not get the queen first? So this is a very dubious compensation for white. He does not have enough for the queen. But all the excitement isn't over quite yet. That looks like a desperado for white. Simply bishop t6, or white isn't threatening anything except the pawn on f5. And to be quite frank, that's not much of a threat either. But Crazy 8 you need to play, because you're down to your last 14, 13, 12, 11 seconds. And well, neither player has berserked, so they do have the extra time. And this just felt a bit unnecessary for black. So the queen is a great defensive piece. But rook f8. The black king is running. And all of a sudden white is in good shape. So it seems. You can pick up the queen. Or can you do even more? It's awfully close to mate after knight b4, king b5, a4, queen to a5, and knight c6 looked like checkmate. Maybe this is checkmate also. Or maybe it's not. So the idea being queen d5, I suppose. Now black dies. I'm curious here. Maple Kev won, but here black is in great shape. Yeah, bishop g6 looked like a very solid defense. Bishop at g6 again. So letting white attack here just felt a bit unnecessary, even though it's probably nothing. So here black could have gone for the attack himself, playing bishop h3. But taking with the king was a bad choice. Yeah, just simply take with the queen, I think. Or bishop h3. Yeah, either way, taking with the king was super bad. And they traded some mistakes here. Black is still better here, actually. But this quickly went south. I thought I spotted a mate here with knight b5, but apparently pawn at b5 is quicker. Yeah, this is the mate I saw. And I thought knight to c6. But wait, that opens up an escape route here. Okay. Oh well. So white was winning here, clearly. Just hopeless. Okay, let's see what happens in the tournament. Crazy 8 still in the lead, but now Maple Kev is on fire, as is Black Zeus. But neither of the Maple Kev and Black Zeus are playing at the moment. So let's see if Crazy 8 can can bounce back. What was the opening? So black is actually playing Crazy 8's own opening here. And black is being very kind here, creating this super center for white and great attacking chances. So if black puts something here, white can simply capture, put another bishop on h6. And white will win the queen here. And also, he's very vulnerable here. White can check on either d8 or e8 here. Actually, rook h8 is a cute mate here. Yeah, king takes, you take with the queen here, take with the queen and bishop g7 mate. That's a nice finish by Crazy 8. So apparently Maple Cav has left the tournament. So we won't see him anymore, but Crazy 8 is playing again. Let's see this. They have both berserked. So black does seem a bit weak here, I would say. What about knight h5? Threatening g7, threatening moves like knight at f6. Isn't this very dangerous? So he chose another path here. And if you take on c8, black would have needed to take back with the queen, because otherwise there was bishop d6. White doesn't quite have enough here. So all he needed was a pawn and this would be over. But now isn't this mate somewhere? Sure looks so. Black is going in for the kill, bringing the white king out on the board, and it's over. But I thought Vegakov had a nice position there, didn't he? I don't know about the pawn c3 move, but this bishop at e5 looks very good for white. And indeed, even knight at f6 check looks great. I was thinking knight h7, also very natural. Okay, but it shows knight c4, still a good position for white. Great position, in fact. And this is a nice finish, actually. Pawn e7, forcing king takes and then take on c8. And if you take with a rook, you have bishop at d6. But what if you take with the queen? Then queen here, and then pawn, bishop b5. And what's the point here? Okay, so you pick up a pawn and then you just trade the house. And yeah, this is over. Okay. Very instructive. Pawn e7 would have decided the game. And this is not so clear. Black could even take on f2. Look. Queen takes f2 is enough. Mate in 14. So once again, white is better. And yeah, queen d6 looks so natural, trading the queens. And alas, you simply don't have enough here as white. What's the last chance here then? Knight d4. Okay. That keeps the black queen out for a while at least. But this is over. Hop. Okay. Let's see. Sorry. Banana Joe. Black Zeus is playing. Yeah, let's have a look at the top board game. I have a feeling that this is a little early for black. I like pushing the D pawn twice here. So black gives up a piece for a tempo and a strong center, but it's a bit passive here. I don't like the black pawn structure here anymore. White got a piece, got a pawn in hand to start massaging the black king side. And c6 is hanging. And this is just a disaster. Okay, white is winning. No doubt about that. If black takes twice on f6, you have bishop at g5. So white is basically just putting a lot of pieces on the board, and sacrificing the queen won't help. And as this is a forced mate. Take f6, pawn takes pawn here, and then you take on f5 and you clear h6 for a pawn, and then a queen on g7. So it's a forced mate. And I'm surprised he didn't go for it. But it won't matter. Oh, that must hurt. If you move the rook, you have knight takes f7 maybe. And then queen f8. If the king takes on f7. And if you go to g6, you have queen at h5 mate. So Crazy8 wins. And he's taking a huge lead, and even huger when you consider that Maple Kev has left the tournament. So both Crazy8 and Black Zeus are available. Maybe they will play now. Oh, look at the clock here, Black Zeus. This is the thing. I don't like when players are lagging like this. I hate playing lagging players. So let's watch this game. Some mutual chances here. What about knight h3? King takes here, pawn, and king just heads up the board, and there's no mate. Knight f3, king takes, pawn, king g3, and it's just all over. Okay, so where is the forced mate here? Maybe it's better to check on e7 rather than h6, because you might want to have a die here on h6, supporting a queen on g7. Oh, maybe I'm just blind. I thought maybe it was forced mate with knight e7. But what do I know? So here, for instance, yeah, that looks okay also. So here somewhere you want to prevent the king from running away. But how do you do that? You only have diags in hand. But c7 is hanging, so this is not a big problem at all. Simply take and queen d2 or, oh yeah, it's even mate in 1. But let's have a look at the game here. I thought knight e7 is mate, yeah. Knight e7, bishop at g7, queen h6, and then simply take here, because this rook isn't covering. So that was a forced mate. Was white winning the whole way here? I suppose. Yeah, bishop f4, c7 is hanging. Okay. Oh, sorry. Crazy 8 in the lead. And that was a mate. Are there any more strong players here who can catch up? Plant Eater was playing. He's not playing anymore. So let's see what Crazy 8 is up to. So usually whenever you have a chance, it's good to pin your opponent's knights. It's not so much that you want to take the knight with your bishop, because that costs tempo, but you have the chance to take the knight whenever you like to, and that's good. That gives you control of the game. So keep in mind that black has the opportunity to play c5 at some point here, getting a pawn to attack that white kingside fianchetto. Maybe something brutal like h5 here. Welcome everybody who's watching. If you have any questions or comments, just type it in the chat. So this was surprisingly conservative and I'd say even passive by Crazy 8. This shouldn't cause white any problems. So this is aiming at the h6 pawn. Crazy 8 spending a lot of time here. Maybe this will cost him later on. So he thinks that taking here on h6 is not so dangerous after all. Well, black does get a bishop in hand, so he can put it on g7, but I was thinking maybe queen h4 and just claim that the two pawns are useful. Now the situation is not as favorable for white if he wants to take on h6 with a strong black knight on e4. So the black king side a bit loose, but who knows? You might even be able to play g5 here, can you? It does win a piece. So the knight to c4 introduces a range of threats. You can take twice here, and you can take once, and then the d4 pawn is hanging. So why not take and just take d4 now? This should be super good for black. You can take e2 and pick up the queen. But I'm almost tempted to take on e4 and then pawn f3. Yeah. Take on e4, the threat is still there. You just play pawn e4. This is winning quickly for black, I think. So a few trades and bishop e4, picking up the queen. And quickly delivering mate. Okay. Crazy 8 has a firm lead. I wonder if this is an interesting game. No, not really. So maybe this could be something. Or is Crazy 8... Okay. Crazy 8 versus Kajandish. So if white can play d4 undisturbed, this is favorable for white with the d4 versus e6 pawn center. Black tries to be active here in the opening, hitting the bishop here. If white takes on c6, you need to take with the pawn, because queen takes, you can take on f7, then there's a fork on e5. Let's say bishop takes, pawn takes, and then what? The thing with if you play d4, all of a sudden black drops a pawn somewhere here, and then the d4 pawn is weak. c4 looks like a very odd choice, but the queen is being chased. I was thinking maybe pawn g4 instead. And maybe pawn g4 is a possibility here also. But then knight d4 maybe. No, yeah, queen e5 then. So black couldn't take on h6 because of bishop takes here, and then a knight fork on g7. And probably you will take on c6 and play knight g7 now, also forcing black to take with the rook. And the rook white has in hand is a very dangerous one. White could go for rook at h8 maybe. Or even, I'm thinking maybe knight takes h7 is the threat. Because knight takes, you have g8 queen, and knight takes, queen takes, then you have rook h8. Maybe knight takes h7 is annoying. That just seems a little too late, I'm afraid. So white does take on h7. And I'm not sure. This just seems a little weird. Because now white is threatening to... Maybe he missed that white could queen there. One threat here is taking on f8 and then knight at g7. And it's still a threat. Just take here. Knight g7, because if the king goes somewhere here, you have bishop g5. And now, simply knight g7. If the king goes here, you have a knight fork on e5. Or rook check and then knight fork. Picking up, and you can even take on b4 and then take the queen and... Oh. Ouch. Okay, nice win there by Crazy8. Who is playing Banana Joe? Sorry, I'm just texting. So what's happening here? Well, it's a fairly quiet position. Looks like black has some control here. He's a bit stronger in the center. He has a semi-open C file. He can choose to trade on G3 when he wants to. Well, rook C8 looks natural. So a little safe move here. Possibly wanting to take on E3 and trade a piece for 2 pawns at some point. I don't quite see how white is supposed to break free here, and indeed white didn't see it either, so he went a bit desperate here. Okay, so he's trapping the bishop on h6, getting the piece back, but it takes some time. I wonder if black has something here. If white retreats, maybe black can play pawn e3, just keep on harassing the white pieces. So instead white goes for a, well, I have to say, a bit dubious piece sacrifice here on h7. The compensation is not obvious. So h8 doesn't seem ideal, but maybe it's his best move after all. Usually the pieces will decide matters in the end anyway. Thing with knight h4 is that white can trade anytime he likes. Maybe knight g4. Oh, that's aggressive. That is super aggressive. What if maybe we take and just run to the queen side. If bishop h5, you don't take on h5 because you get mated on g4, but you can run. Although I spotted a problem here. King f6, pawn e5, king e7, and knight g6. So you need to go this way. And black needs to find quick compensation here for the, or find a quick counterattack, I should say. Where is it? So Crazy 8 needs to be really careful here. One pawn for white could decide matters, or at least 2 pawns. But I'm surprised that white wasted his rook on g3. That's such a passive square. Now black has all the time in the world to just start dropping his pieces on the board. White needed that rook to deliver mate. Why not, for instance, queen g4? Queen g4. Queen g4 looks very natural. This looks very bad for white. Because how on earth is he going to break through now? Black just needs to be a bit careful not to trade pieces. The bishop is fine. Just do a bit of scorched earth on the light squares. White will need a heavy to deliver mate. And he's not getting a heavy piece. So this is starting to look scary all of a sudden. What happened there? What on earth happened? Wasn't there a... Okay, white won. Black resigned. Yeah, heavy on g8. But I'm thinking in this position, simply pawn h2, king h1, rook. No, it's not mate, is it? Bishop h2 and knight g3. Let's see, because there is something for black here. But you need to be willing to spend some material. And this is a very cool move. Okay, so it's very tempting here to take on e5. But then, rook here, bishop at f2. Forced to take. Bishop takes. Wow. And supposedly this is a forced mate. That wasn't easy to see. Yeah, black has just enough to mate the white king. So, Crazy 8 lost some momentum. Can Black Zeus catch up? Anjo Nakamura seems to be on the verge of winning here, I would say. A bit unclear because Black doesn't have that many reserves in hand. And White doesn't have much of an attack. Crazy position. 57 moves. So, queen check here. Pick up the queen with check. And now, White still isn't threatening anything, is he? Epic game, this. This is a good move. Trapping the white king. Just pick up some more material. And this will be the death of the white king. He's gasping for air, and what is white going to do with those two extra queens in hand? Let's see what happened in this game. So he likes his B3 opening, this Black Zeus guy. Who is it anyway? I'm not sure who he is. And analysis board. So white fancies this setup. And indeed he has some interesting squares to work with. Black is super duper weak on the light squares, and simply bishop at e6 picking up d7 would have decided matters, but trying to pry the long diagonal open. Winning the queen looks like a good idea, but black shows some defensive skills here. He has almost equalized, and now all of a sudden he is actually better. Pawn at f2. Okay, they're both training some mistakes here, and it does look like black missed some easy winning moves here in the end, but he's so safe. He's so safe. Crazy8 is in the lead, playing Black Zeus. Let's watch this. What happened in the opening? E4, E5, and he's doing this again. Bishop C7 and then back with black. And in another game, white chose to simply take on H5, which turned out to be fine. This is another idea. And taking F6 and just checking on taking on F6 is a strong threat. Which move are you discussing now? Knight D4 in which game? If you could just please inform me which game you're referring to. So this is live, and I guess it's not this game. And simply checking on G8 looks great. Queen takes, pawn takes. But Crazyhouse fan, which game are you referring to? And then Queen F7. Queen F7 and maybe Queen H5. Isn't that winning? King here, Queen H5, and then what? I don't see it for black here. Oh, maybe he can take on G5 then. Oh well, you can take on D5 if you like. That seems very, very, very strong. Oh, so I'm just curious which game you were about the knight D4 line you were mentioning. Which game was that? Oh, this game. Knight D4, 14 E5. Okay, so e5. Okay. Oh, never mind. I think this works just fine. It should. I'm curious if a knight at h6 was a move there instead of queen h5. Because knight h6 threatens queen g8. It's not so easy to cover because there's this mother mate on f7 also. But there's an obvious threat now, and maybe you can just take it on h6, because if black takes there, the g7 is hanging, and this works just fine also. Take here and queen h7 mate. So I recommend Black Zeus to check his openings. That won't do at this level. And Crazy8 is playing Mugwort. So you could play. Okay, so apparently there was some nice forced line there for white. Even better than what he played in the game. Let's watch Crazy8 versus Mugwort. And Mugwort is, I think, somewhat of an opening specialist. So I don't know much about this, but I know that there is plenty of opportunities for black to go wrong here. And I wonder if black hasn't blundered already, because where is that knight in hand that could have saved this position? This is looking like an opening disaster. White simply threatening to take e6, and this pin is useful. So it seems a bit odd to develop the bishop and spend tempos taking the knight on d5, but you do get this temporary bind on the e5, and bishop e6 clearly can't be the right move. And you can see it, judging by the way Crazy8 is spending a lot of time also. So white is just building up some pressure here, serious pressure on e6 and on d5. So nothing wrong with just taking on e6, I think. I think Paul Keres, the Estonian Grandmaster, world-class player, he said something like, if you find a good move, start looking for a better one. But when you're playing these games with little time on the clock, it's more like when you find a good move, stop looking. I'm wondering about the queen check here on b5, because the b7 pawn could be critical. Could be, not saying it is. Although it takes quite a while to pick up the b7 pawn. But a free pawn is always yummy. Yummy, yummy, yummy. So White's only problem here is his lack of development. So there's a literal smorgasbord of pieces to eat. You could maybe take d5 instead. Apparently Mugwort is interested in the position because he's spending a lot of time here, and surely there is some good move White can play. White really doesn't have to worry about the bishop taking f2 because after king takes, Black doesn't have a good follow-up. I don't quite see the purpose of pawn c6. A lot of trades happening here. I'm not sure that favors White, who doesn't have as good development as Black has. At least the position gets a bit randomized, which should favor Black. Give him some practical chances. Well, you need to take on d7 with some piece. Oh, that's the trick. You take on e6, and then you can take on d7 with check, leaving the h8, a8 rook hanging. And that's a nice little check, because if you interpose, you have knight e5 check. Also, c5 is hanging. What about taking here on c6? Surely that cannot be bad. Yeah, so quickly take f2. Hope for the best. Play something. And then pick up d8. So wherever Black captures, he's in trouble. Queen here, but pawn here, and bishop here is mate. I have a feeling that White, first of all, Black shouldn't play bishop e6. Yeah, that's bad. And simply playing d3 was probably better here, but it can't be bad to grab that free pawn. But here, taking with the bishop looked better, yeah. And obviously black should have taken on f2 here, just to get some chances. That was the best move here. I was thinking about queen takes c5, but... and I'm sure he calculated this. Aha. This looks very strong. Because you cannot go back. There's a mate in 1 here on c5. And black needs to take. And then you can take c6 and simply pick up the queen on d8 and the black king will die. All right. So welcome Mugwort. He's at 61. And we have 2 hours to go. He's on fire. Maybe Crazy8 is a bit nervous. Maybe he has to go and take a leak or something. So let's see if Mugwort can catch up. He's playing some 1700 rated guy, so he'll quickly gain some points here. Crazy8 is playing some other dude. Black Zeus. Okay. So, is anyone watching? Yeah, I have a few persons in the audience. That's nice. I hope you're enjoying my comments. Hope I'm not making a fool out of myself too much. Let's look at this game. Looks like a very instructive win for white. Let's see. So here's the thing. I think white can play d5 because of knight e5 you can capture on e5, and if you take the queen you have bishop b5 check. So this is not as clear, but okay. Apparently he just built up some pressure on the white squares. Okay, nice little finish there. Let's have a look at this position. Knight c6. I think d5 is a very strong move here. Yeah, d5. Because this looks natural and this is just crushing. Okay. For instance, take here, bishop b5. This is just hopeless. Hopeless for black. And what if you take with the pawn then? Well, this is obviously still strong. Could you even take here maybe? Yeah. Your move. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Very bad position for black. Let's go back to the tournament. Against Gotchi. Okay. This could be interesting. Is there an upset coming here? White seems to have some strong threats. But maybe black has everything under control. Bishop g6 was a lovely defensive move. Black has a lot of light pieces. He just needs to find a way to put them on the board, and it's happening. Look at the control on the board there by the black pieces. The white queen is almost trapped. And in a little while, for instance, pawn at g3 will be a problem. Yeah, pawn at g3. And if black can get his hands on a heavy piece, a rook h2 mate will happen. Or a knight even is good. Knight g3. One problem though, Black Zeus is down to his last 12 seconds. I think he has berserked. Is there some way we can see this? Yeah, he's not getting any extra time. So hang in there, Serge M. Oh, taking everything on g2 was not the way to try to save this game. Oh well. I'm curious about the position when we first came here. Yeah, black is actually a lot better. It's just a matter of placing all the pieces on the board. Hopeless for white. So two strong players facing off here. And white just ignores the knight on f6, trying to finish his development. It looked like a slightly curious decision to take with the bishop rather than the pawn, because if you take with the pawn, the d4 pawn comes under fire. But maybe there was some problem with the knight g3, putting pressure on the bishop and the pawn. So white might even consider, oh, maybe it's just bad to take an e6 and push the h-pawn. You have to look out for counterattacks like bishop takes c2 and then take d4. This makes more sense because black is almost sitting there with all his pieces in the lap. And pawn to g6 will either win a piece back or just put a lot of pressure on the black king. Maybe you should do something like bishop g4 first. I was thinking bishop g4 and then pawn g6, leaving the e6 pawn hanging. And if black tries to play knight f5, you could have taken and then played knight e6. Okay, because now if bishop g4, you can play knight f5. And then the rook is protecting the knight. But this seems fine as well. So black only needs to be careful about knights and heavies White has invested quite a lot of material. But this is starting to look good for white, isn't it? I mean, bishop at e6, picking up d5, threatening the knight. And black only has knights in hand, and knights are the kind of pieces that he wants to avoid to give. Okay. Tricky position. So where can white find a heavy piece? Maybe queen d1 followed by queen f3 somehow. So now you cannot play queen f3 because black simply takes, and then he has queen d2 followed by queen f2 mate. So castles. Wow. Well, the threat against d5 is really annoying. As soon as white gets a knight, he can play knight at f7 check, recapture with the pawn. And surely this is good for white. If black takes the queen, knight f7, picking up the rook with all sorts of deadly threats, and I don't see any way for black to finish white. Or is there? Okay, so you want to pick up the f2 rook. But rook takes f2, and okay, he didn't play rook takes f2. And what's this? Is black Zeus winning on time? Threatening, rook takes f8 check. No, it's anything but a new account. He's played some 35,000 games. A little forced mate there in the end. Let's check the finish of this game. Black is he really better here? It's not so clear, I'd say. Castle. Okay. The computer is a bit confused here. After this, white is better, but he didn't play queen f3. That's the idea that I mentioned, just to get that heavy piece. Play queen f3 here. So this does seem like a nice finish. Yeah, by black. But he did miss a chance to play queen f3. And that's the idea that white had to use. He got the chance to get the heavy piece and he missed it. So in the lead, Crazy 8. He's playing Re Castro. Let's join this game. We can watch the opening as well. Kingside fianchetto d4 d5 opening. So seems like an odd choice to place a knight on a5. That's not where you want to have your pieces. Don't forget that black is threatening c2. Could be important at some point. White would love to trade queens because the black king is clearly weaker. Maybe not sure what's happening here. So white doesn't mind giving up the rook for a piece there on the queen side at the right moment. Maybe b4 is white's idea here. b4, because the b7 pawn will be hanging and a5 obviously will be hanging as well. Two knights looking at each other is usually a bad sign. Maybe black needs to do something like b6 just to protect his queen side, although b6 does weaken the squares even further, but b4 looks strong here and you can simply take a5. Giving a rook and piece for two knights is a good trade for white. So how do you continue here? Attacking h5, Also, just putting a piece on the board is often a good idea. F4 seems like an excellent square. He keeps an eye on e2, so if black takes here, you can take back with a pawn if you need to. I would like to somehow blast the center open. I don't know if c4 is possible. White might even consider doubling here on the b file, giving up 2 rooks for these bishops, because these bishops are holding the black position together. White should just ignore the threats against king's side, and taking on g4 allows black to set up his zombie army here on the king's side. Every piece traded is another zombie in the black army. Ton of trades there, and now the position is wide open. Wow. I don't see any clear threats here for white, so for black, so you could probably just try to promote those pawns. Pawn e7 maybe? Pawn e7? And Kastrov lost. I think he had a very good position around here. Yeah, pawn at e7. Very strong move. Don't start defending when you're on the verge of winning. Here black had a chance with pawn at f3. And once again, pawn at e7, in just as I said. Pawn at e7. Okay, so here black lost on time, but he was lost on the board as well. Did I say black was lost? Black was winning there. White was lost. Oh well. What shall we look at now? Crazy 8 versus Anjou Nakamura. And Crazy 8 is actually down in their games. I think the white player is an excellent opening specialist. He knows what he's doing. He's playing quickly, gaining a lot of time, and I don't know what to do here. What is black supposed to do here? I mean, if you take on c3 with a knight, white just takes with the pawn, and he has super control and extra space, extra everything. So Crazy 8 is thinking what to do. So this looks like a strategical disaster for black. This knight could probably continue to h5 unless black plays h5 himself. But this does weaken g6, so if white can get his hands on a pawn on g6 would be good, but he spots knight at g6. And what happens if black takes here? Do you take g6? Do you take e6? So rook h7 looks passive, but okay. Queen takes g5. What is this? Okay, so if the king takes on f8, you have knight takes e6, leaving the queen hanging. So maybe this is a nice tactical sequence. Black does get a pawn and a piece. Not so bad. But I'm wondering... is there some sort of tactical trick here? The knight on h4. Maybe bishop f6. Because takes. Maybe bishop takes. Maybe you can sacrifice your queen later. Bishop here, take with the queen. Bishop g5. Or maybe I'm just hallucinating. e6 is hanging. Although look out for checkmates later on. Knight h3, pawn g2. Only 4.5 seconds for Crazy 8, who has some real problems here. But maybe white has problems of his own. So this was most likely not according to plan for white. Let's see if black can put those pieces to work. He has a few pieces in hand. Oh, grab the rook on a8. Don't think. I couldn't see anything for black there. Was there something dangerous? Now it looks more dangerous because now you don't have the protection on the light squares. I'm thinking Anju Nakamura he lost his temper a little bit. And maybe black is turning this game around. Or then again, maybe it isn't. Oh, those knights are so annoying. I don't see anything forced for black, so white can just take a rook and be happy, I think. And now he's even more happy. I think maybe... How is this position? It's unclear. I would have just grabbed a8 without thinking here. And even more so in this position. Yeah, just take a8. Because here, yeah, bishop d6. Bishop d6 looks dangerous. Threatening the knight on c7 and also maybe sacrifices on h2. So black had his chance. And here in the end it was over. Okay. Crazy8 is in the lead. Black Zeus in second place. And it's getting late here. I need to go to bed maybe eventually. Anyway, I need to go and see a man about a horse. So, how do I do this? Maybe I can watch some commercial while I'm away. So here's a commercial for you. I'll be back. So I'm back, and let's see what's happening here. Just a few seconds left. Looks like black is winning. Yeah, he's winning. Has a heavy in hand for h3. You can just take h2 if you like. And that's enough. Oh, 1 second left. You have someone who wants to challenge me. Well, I'm not playing tonight. I'm just watching the Crazyhouse Shield Arena. Crazy 8 is in the lead. Followed by Black Zeus. And even though Michael Kev left a long time ago, he's still in third place. I'm sure Anjo Nakamura will overtake him. And look at Mugwort. He's building up a long streak of wins. But I don't think he'll be able to catch Crazy 8. You'll be in touch. Fine. And who's the guy who wants to challenge me? Let's look at Crazy 8. The leader in the tournament. So this is new to me. Offering an early bishop trade. This wins a tempo for white. And opening up the position when you just gave up a tempo seems like a bad idea to me. So here we are live. White is just completing his development, and this is a bad sign. If you want to place a pawn on the board, you don't want to place it passively on c6. So this is clearly in favor of white. b4 is an aggressive move. This is undermining the black position. If black takes, you probably take on d5. So black is alarmingly behind in development here. Plenty of different moves to choose from there. This seems natural. The knight was passive here. Clearing the view for the queen. Heather Yeet Spaghetti. Also adding some pressure on the d5 pawn. And maybe e6 at some point is a possibility. I'm wondering about a move like bishop at a5. Bishop, oh, you can play bishop b6 maybe. So this is an interesting pawn sacrifice. You really don't want to trade the knights, but this looks dangerous. If black takes here, you have pawn at f7, and then you can take on d8. So white will get his material back. The question is how, because taking on c7 and then taking on e6 is a strong threat. It's good you like this. I like that you like this. So Beferl, or however you pronounce his name, is having some huge problems here. So welcome out on the board. E6 is hanging. Maybe I would have preferred to take with the other knight, because then the queen would have been trapped. More or less. But the queen isn't feeling very well here either. So how do you finish this? Plenty of time for... If you had a knight in hand, you could go for queen takes a7 followed by knight b6. So that was an odd choice by black, and white simply wins. Nice game there by Crazy8. Who is hunted by black? Zeus. Who seems to be doing very well against some 1900 rated guy. Iron Maiden, or I suppose that's the point of the 4 there. It's well, let's see what happens. For some reason, white resigned, and this was a strange decision, and not a very nice one. Come on, you're a disgrace to Iron Maiden. Well, I like Iron Maiden, obviously. Not the Crazyhouse player, but the heavy metal band. I like all sorts of music. Why do I get the feeling that the guy in the chat now is one of my students? So let's see this. Their new album, I haven't listened to it, actually. So I'm afraid I don't have any thoughts whatsoever. Is it good? The new album? Because the last really good album they made was Brave New World. Thank you, OK. I saw that you had sent some messages to me about the Crazyhouse League or whatever. OK. And I just didn't have the time to respond. And the tournament starts in a week or so. Yeah, on Wednesday. I'll see what happens. The thing is that I would have said no just 1 day ago, but it turns out we're switching to remote education here at my school, so I'll be sitting home quite a lot, so maybe we'll see if I... Well, I teach mathematics, actually. Eat spaghetti. Oh, I don't want to play. It's too slow for me. I'm an old impatient guy. So who is better off in this position? So if white takes with the pawn, you can play knight f4 maybe. So maybe you need to take with a bishop. But I wonder if knight at h4 is annoying then. Are there any strong players in the Crazyhouse league? What happened there? Okay, so knight check. And a quick queen sacrifice. Does seem a bit optimistic for black, this. Because white has all the squares here covered and the bishop is participating in the defense. Also note that there are some annoying checks here maybe at some point. I'm not sure, do you put it all the way down in the garage or? And then maybe pawn f2. Seems a bit slow, but white is up a bit on material here. Black only has a piece and a pawn for the queen, which shouldn't be quite enough. So that's a strong move, and possibly we're heading for a perpetual, because if white defends from behind, black could just take and take. This, I'd say, looks a bit dubious for white. Although there is the check here I mentioned. But so strong threats here for black. Just positionally, I mean, he doesn't even bother taking the queen on d1 here. So probably just pawn f4 and look happy. That's a nice move, putting pressure on the b7, c6 pawns. Although you do have to look out so you don't abandon the c2 defense. For instance, now black might consider taking b7 and then check and take the rook. White is so low on time here. And it's really hard to get to the black king. maybe bishop c2, hoping to put a rook on d1. You could have played rook d1 and just taken on h1 as well. So the knight is covering, but now there's a bishop also coming. You can take here with check. Looking quite hopeless. Just trade some queens and it's all over. Too much for black there. Let's look at the critical position where white decided to go for the win. So I said bishop takes d4 here, but white decided to go for knight c7 check, and indeed queen takes is a strong move. This looks a bit passive. Castles looks much better considering how much trouble black got with the king later on. Queen b5 looks interesting, but I was thinking this move. So black can just castle, but this doesn't lead anywhere. This was just a perpetual. After this, I think black was just better the whole game. All his pieces are so annoying. Okay. So Black Zeus is closing in, but he's currently pausing his tournament. Let's watch what happened to Mugwort in third. Quite a winning streak. So let's watch Crazy 8 again. And what has some very nice pressure on the dark squares here. Black unable to castle in either direction. And that move threatening g7 just looks brutal, because black can never take on f6 because of the pin of the fork. So white just increases the pressure, now threatening to take on h7. And let's pretend black plays h6. Can you just go to h7 then? Because now surely, okay, do you really take the queen? I was about to say maybe you take on g8. But this looks good. Maybe e6 check, then queen f7, take on e6 with the queen, pick up the rook or whatever. I've played chess since I was, well, I learned playing chess when I was about 5 years old. And that was more than 20 years ago. Actually, it was 45 years ago. Because I'm an old has-been, and it's made in 2 here. Okay, nice little finish there. And how did black manage to get in this type of mess? So this is how not to play as black. I wonder how bad the computer thinks this is. He recommends bishop at h8. Look at that star move. So this is clearly not good. Yeah, taking the queen is the best. And e6. Oh, even pawn at e6 is good. Yeah, so are these guys playing any interesting? Yeah, you're absolutely right. It was a nice defensive move, actually. Bishop at h8, typical of computers. I would say they are not so biased. They are just playing some concrete, very objective chess and Crazyhouse. Hi there. I have a username 69. Yeah, but even bishop at h8 was black had a bad position there. I'm not playing myself tonight. I'm just commenting on the Crazyhouse Shield arena. Yeah, for instance, you could just go back to h4 with the bishop, and you have nice control, extra space. Black has super problems castling. The bishop prevents white from castling queen side. So, which game should we follow? I'm not sure. So, should we watch Crazy 8 maybe? He seems to be hunting the white king. So look at these beautiful bishops. And maybe you could consider taking on h3 after a move like this. Oh, it was hanging on f4. Because taking on h3 with the queen was also interesting. As you can see now, black can leave the queen hanging because of bishop takes here and knight at f3. So black is having a little fun, leaving his queen en prise. And maybe he can even consider taking on e4 with the queen. Or he has such a strong position here. Thank you everyone for watching. And it's just 1 hour left. Maybe I'll stay awake and comment the whole thing. Although I was 1 hour late, I should say. I didn't comment the first hour. So, white is in a world of pain here. So he has to give up the queen here, and he'll get mated quite soon. Maybe black should just pick up the knight. Check first and pick up the knight. Or he could go check here with the queen, pick up the bishop. but you would like to have a knight in hand. I don't see how white can defend against both queen checks. So now you have everything you need. You pick up this with check and then it's made in the next move. Alright, Crazy 8 wins a game. And lucky for him, Black Zeus is still pausing his tournament. Mugwort is building up his winning streak. Let's check out Mugwort. So what's happening here? Obviously, if you take with the queen, knight f3 will come. And I don't quite see the mate here for either player. Isn't this annoying, taking on c3? Oh, I would have preferred to take on c3 with the bishop opening the b2 square. This is just crazy. Who is better here? Well, can you take on e4? That knight will surely come in handy. But it looks so dangerous. What is this? Take on e4. I don't see a way for black to take advantage. So you could even consider being greedy there, maybe take on f4, but this looks like a safe corner now, doesn't it? And this little world tour is almost over, but it looks like white is safe now. Ta-da! And not much to do with that knight. Maybe there's a forced mate here somewhere, but white can simply take on d4 as well. Let's have a look at this game. White indeed looks better. Yeah, as I said, taking on c3. Oh, it's black is better here. So actually king e2 was the right move. So you should take on c3. Opens up a lot of possibilities. You get that extra knight in hand. Yeah, it's the further the computer calculates, the worse the white position gets. And now, yeah, take e4. This is safe. Nothing to see here. Okay, nice little win by Mugwort. So, what do we watch now? Let's follow Mugwort for a little while. Let's see his opening. A quick e5. Oh. So white is trying to open the position quickly, but this allows pawn at d4. But look at that pin. Black gives up the queen. And he will get it back by just taking on b2 with check and promoting. So turns out Black got the best out of the position. Maybe you take on a1, queen takes, and then knight to a3. I was thinking threatening fork on c2 or threatening rook at b1. So maybe white can find some compensation here for the piece that he has sacrificed. Maybe keep on hunting down the black pieces, maybe pawn d5. I'm a bit worried about queen b4 check here. What do you do then? Because the white position is a bit loose. If you need to play pawn at d2, well, black can simply maybe retreat with the bishop. And all of a sudden the white counterattack lost some momentum. Mission accomplished on b4, just retreat back home to base. Threatening d4. d4 is hanging due to the pin. And maybe you could just start undermining the white forces by a pawn to g4. This is looking great for black. Very instructive check there on b4 by black. So it's good to keep the knights off the board. You don't want white knight invading on d5, so I like how he captured with the bishop on e5. Now pawn on h3 could be annoying. I wouldn't want to play white here. Knight at h4, also a classical way of increasing the pressure. Let's say rook g1, and then if white takes here, queen takes, then the pawn on h2 is hanging. Oh, now you can take with check. So the question is, do you spend a tempo on taking on e5? I guess the answer is no. And now watch out for the knight fork on h4, classic. Black is just crashing through here, picking up the queen. And what do you do? White cannot take here because of queen h3 mate, so he needs to go to e2. And then there's a check here. And where's the mate? It's there if now e4 is hanging. But you can just take there and go to f3. The next move, it's mate. Actually, there was a mate the other way also. Queen here, queen f5. Oh well, Margaret keeps on winning, but he is 48 points behind, and now Crazy 8 is also on a winning streak. Maybe these guys will be playing. Crazy 8 just paused his game, so let's follow Margaret a little bit. So let's check the opening here. In this position, I usually go here, but actually I think it's a bad move. I won't tell you why though. So white has given up a pawn, but isn't this some kind of theoretical line? Yeah, bishop g5. But I wonder if white has mixed things up, because he's spent a lot of time here, which is slightly odd. So maybe this isn't theory after all. White spending a lot of time. So white is crashing through here on the king's side. And you can't afford to take on d1. Is this simply winning? Because I don't think this is enough. In this position, I wonder if you can afford spending a move here as white. It does seem a bit risky. You need to take the knight first. And that gives black the opportunity to, I don't know, maybe play bishop f4. Because bishop f4 would have introduced a threat on d2. And also threatened the knight on g5. I wonder if there was a... Okay, so maybe knight g7 then. Oh well, this is too complicated for me. Looks like white has everything under control right now. Taking on h8 seems like a strong threat, possibly followed by queen at g8, when you can take on f7 afterwards. Don't you just take on d2 now? So just a queen trade and then take on h8. Yeah, maybe you do it this way. First check with the rook. But now you can just trade queens. Because white has queen e8. So black doesn't have the time to take on d2. And this is a simple mate in 2. And I'm fairly sure that my word will find it. Let's analyze this game. Yeah, I think white just mixed the lines up. Taking on g5 is maybe good here. I'm not entirely convinced. Even here, taking on g5 seems like a reasonable option. Because this just gives white too much momentum. Pawn f6 looks stronger, yeah. So queen at f4 maybe. It's just bad. Yeah, nothing here. Okay, just a hopeless position. Good evening, gingerbread man. So it looks like the top 3 players have all paused their games. Let's look at this Nakamura dude. Look at Vegakov. He's played more games than anyone, but he's lost more games than anyone as well. But he's in 5th place. So I wonder if this is an interesting game. Let's have a look. Let's go all the way to the start. d4, d5. Very conventional play up until this point. White is giving up a piece for some compensation on the dark squares. And black quickly gave back some material here. Wow, this is crazy. Yeah, psychology I think has a lot to do about a lot of things. But this looks like a strong attack here. Pawn g7, threatening queen h8. I wonder if you should leave the knight here and find something more aggressive. But on the other hand, maybe you should just take the... But this is looking dangerous. Very dangerous. Okay, that looks a bit premature. why not just take on f8? Because look, white is so safe here. If you take on f8, I'm sure white is doing super well here. Okay, we're live. Allowing black to play f6 was not the best for white, I think. Now black has some action here. But don't you just take? Or no, he can take with the h pawn. And this could quickly get ugly. Just pawn h2. Oh, he has a queen in hand. Oh, my. This should be winning for white, but why did he allow the king to go back into the corner? That was a mate in 2. Simply rook g7, king takes e6, and queen d5 is mate. And there was another mate there, wasn't it? Oh, maybe not. Okay, so the bishop is covering h2. That's good. Good news. But knight e2 might be a problem. Knight e2, king h2. Okay, that looks safe. So black is hoping to sacrifice his queen to get a huge attack here. Let's see. This is quite an adventure. White has a couple of heavies in hand, and just watch so you don't go to the c4 square and let black take with the bishop on f7 with check. But actually black can at any point now take on f7 and be quite safe, I think. So maybe pawn b4 and now take on f7 with check. So this is just hopeless for white, who had a great position. And look at that, he's just toying with white. Lucky he didn't have a bishop. I'm sorry, or a knight for h6 there. That would have been a sad end to this game. Okay, so white was winning there at some point, I think. Not here, but around here white is doing super fine. Yeah, bishop g7. And here, just take f8. Just take f8. Strip him of his defenders. Because black cannot take back, I think. So taking was super good. Once again, you should take f8. This allowed black to get some sort of defense. And there's a forced mate with rook h8. Oh well, this is also forced mate. And rook g7, very cute. Bringing in the knight. But here he just messed up. Rook g7 is a forced mate. Followed by queen at d5. And once again, rook at g7 is the move. And rook at h8. All those magnet moves missed by white, who got on the defensive, allowing black to get some counter chances. And all of a sudden, look, pawn g3, mate in 15. Okay, too bad. That was a nice game. And what's up at the top? All the top 3 players are satisfied, I think. So I don't think we'll see much changes at the top. Anjo Nakamura will overtake Magwart in 3rd place and possibly even Black Zeus. But he will never be able to reach Crazy 8 in the 1st spot, I think. Although there aren't too many strong players around now. Shall we follow this to the bitter end? I'm just curious if anyone is listening. When I pressed the 1-minute commercial button, was there actually a 1-minute commercial? Can anyone verify that there was a 1-minute commercial? Thank you guys for watching. Actually, Magwart is well, I think he plays Bughouse these days as well, but he's been around for quite a while. I remember him from Fix, I think. Okay, that must have been it then. Thank you so much, Gingerbread Man. Thank you. So I think I remember Magwart from Fix, and that must have been more than 20 years ago. Because I stopped playing for 20 years. And looks like... was he Creeping Death, I think? I could be wrong. Some strong pressure here on Anjo Nakamura. All the black pieces are participating in the attack. I like the way black has handled this. Black has put all his pieces into the attack, and white is sitting there with 3 pieces in hand. So he's behind in development, and black has some tremendous pressure. I'm speaking with some Swedish guy here. Who's this? Is this someone I know, or? And obviously this is winning for black. He's picked up quite a lot of material. And he just needs to find a way to finish. Tim Aldegarman. Did I get your last name right? Aha, okay. Yeah, well, at least I'm trying to stream a little bit. Yeah, and you played on Fixed as well. back in the days. How is Dad, by the way? Tell him I said hi. So this is threatening the bishop here. Maybe just introduce a rook here on f2. I'm not quite sure how to finish this, but a rook here on the second rank or 7th rank would be nice, threatening some pawns over on the queen side. Maybe just take on c2, take on c3, mate with the knight on f2. Yeah, no worries. You can just let white capture this pawn because you can go into the corner. So just take and then take on c3 maybe. You could go rook c1 maybe, and then take on g1. Oh, I'm not sure. I wonder why he spent a whole rook here. He could have played rook c1 instead, if he wanted to play this idea, which does seem rather good. Yeah, that's the way. Pawn here and just maybe capture it. Oh, this is not the right way to do it. Not quite right. But there are no counter chances, I think. This is not enough for white. Just a few checks. And the king will go back into the corner. So knight f2 finishes the game. Banana Joe puts an end to, well, I was about to say Joe Nakamura's winning streak, but he hasn't won a lot. Yeah, white was toast the whole way, I think, but there maybe was a more elegant way to finish the attack. So not too exciting here at the top. Crazy 8 is winning the tournament. Black Zeus in second, and let's see if Joe Nakamura will take the 3rd place, maybe ahead of Magwert, who made an impressive entrance in this tournament, but he lost a couple of games early on. I wonder who he lost to. He lost to Orlando Gloom and Pawn in Training. So actually I'm a bit tired since Crazy 8 has won the tournament. I dare to say he's winning the tournament. I think I'll call it the night. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. If you like, you can always subscribe to my channel. I can't promise you to stream. I can't promise you anything, but whenever I feel like, I like to stream. And maybe I can buy me a hot dog or something with some extra everything if you subscribe. You're welcome. Thanks for watching, and see you again maybe I'll stream something from the Crazyhouse league. Thank you, and congratulations on winning the tournament. So, bye-bye, everybody.